Very good late afternoon from the Central Baltic office from crispy wintry Turku. Nice that you have decided to spend the next hour and a half with me today, talking about the program objectives of our new Central Baltic program. And I see that we have already a good amount of people here, almost 50, and some might still be dropping in. So everyone is of course welcome, but let's start the show, so to say. The goals for this part of the Applicant Seminar series is to go through the contents of the environmental part of the program, the environmental priorities, so to say, and also to understand what is required from an environmental project in the Central Baltic program. I will firstly say that although we have a strong focus on results, we still have very broad program objectives, so you are able to address a very broad range of more specific things within the program. And please use the opportunity to ask questions also during this event. For that, we would like you to use the chat function of Zoom. So put your questions there, and then after each PO has been handled, we have some time for questions and answers, and my colleagues will help me with the questions, and I will try my best to answer those questions. And also stay tuned for feedback possibility. We will put a feedback link to the chat at the end of this part of the seminar series, so you can provide your feedback and feelings about this session. But let's go on. Just a few basic things to start with. If you have been listening these seminars before, you already know that we are having the same program area than we had the previous period. So working with the same countries, we have 8 regions included into the program, both from Sweden and Finland. You can see the map here, and then we have the whole of Estonia included, and almost the whole of Latvia as well. And of course, the Åland Islands here in between Finland and Sweden are a part of our program, still as an autonomous region. Some other basic things. Let's start with the funding. We have altogether 118 million euros from the European Regional Development Fund to give to the projects. And you can also see the green bubble here, which tells you that for these program objectives that I will be talking about today, we have roughly 52 million euros to fund the projects under these 3 entities. And some principal things here. To have a project, you need partners from at least 2 participating countries. So minimum of 2 partners from different countries. The most important things also to have a clear cross-border added value in your project. That is what we are working for, cross-border cooperation. You need to contribute to our indicators. That is the one of the most important things as well. And regarding the different types of projects, we have still regular and small projects. And for the regular projects, the 2-step application approach will be applied. And a bit more closely to the environment and also some other general issues. What will remain from the previous program or programs, we are still very much focused and result oriented. So result orientation here means that you should, as an applicant, read our program documents and understand these program objectives. And for each program, we have a description here today and can discuss them also in a bit more detail. And we will fund projects that contribute to these objectives. And focusing, of course, means that we focus also on using our money wisely. So we try to fund the projects which have the biggest and the most potential impact in the region and into these things that we are dealing with. We have simplified the program using the simplified cost options. Cross-border cooperation, I already mentioned, that's very important. Specifically on the environmental side, what will remain is we are still focusing on the coastal and marine environment, improving the state of the sea, and also focusing on transport and traffic related issues, coming from a bit different angle than before, but still working with the similar topics. And what is new then, we will be working with circular economy issues. That's a huge chunk of things which I will talk about a little bit later, and also some new issues regarding the transport and traffic related things. And as a new thing, we also have a new e-monitoring system. Those of you who have already implemented projects in the previous period are familiar with EMS. Now our new friend is GEMS, through which we will receive applications and reports and monitor your project's progress. I will not go into very deep regarding the intervention logic. I will just mention that our intervention on the environmental side will focus on these three program objectives: circular economy, improved coastal and marine environment, and decreased CO2 emissions. And I must say that these can be overlapping, these can be very close to one another, depending on which kind of topics would be chosen for the projects. But although you may have even effects on different things from projects implemented under a different topic, then you still always have to choose one of the three towards which you are focusing on. This is important to remember. And this choice can be made if you are unsure based on the indicators. I will come back to those a bit later. Yes, I mentioned results already. So here is what we are actually expecting from these three program objectives. So regarding the circular economy, we want to see as a result that the product and service cycles or chains are improved. So you will provide your input in, let's say, making circularity more complete in the Central Baltic region and improving the possibilities to take it even further. And regarding program objective 4, related to the coastal and marine environment and state of the Baltic Sea, we are continuing along the, I would say, old lines. So trying to reduce nutrients and other harmful substances from reaching the Baltic Sea from different sources. And regarding the traffic issues, the topic is decreased CO2 emissions. And as a result there, we would obviously like to see that the CO2 emissions are reduced, and specifically from the intermodal transport nodes and areas. So this is the or these are the foci that we want to have in our program in these as such quite broad topics. Moving on to the actual topics, I have the program objective number 3, first, joint circular economy solutions. And maybe to say something about the state of play currently and from which this program objective originates. These are the bigger things behind it. We have first and foremost the EU Circular Economy Action Plan. This is quite a general document, but something that you might want to check and read to gain an understanding about this big entity here. This action plan is part of the Green Deal, as almost all environmental things in the EU currently are. And this is a strategy to achieve a climate neutral, resource efficient and competitive economy in the EU countries. The big goal behind this is, of course, the climate neutrality, achieving that by 2050 in the EU as well. And I must say that this is a common goal, so we are not alone in moving towards the circular economy, but this is a Europe-wide goal. And it is also reflected in many other Interreg programs. I would maybe just mention here the programs that are functional in the Baltic Sea area, namely first the Baltic Sea Region program, which covers the whole Baltic Sea. They have an objective 3.1, actually, circular economy under their third priority, which is called climate neutral societies. So in case you have geographically bigger ambitions, you might also want to check that out. Then we also have a bilateral Interreg program, Estonia-Latvia, which is working in these two countries. And they also have a thematic objective regarding environment and resource efficiency, and talking about energy saving, sorting waste and waste reuse. So coming also very close to these topics that we have on our agenda. So if you plan for bilateral cooperation between Estonian and Latvian partners, then you might also want to check out the Estonia-Latvia program. But moving on, you already saw the result indicator. It is repeated here. So we are measuring the number of improved product or service cycles or chains that are improved as results of our projects. And this approach comes from the challenges related to waste in general. There is a lot of waste, still quite low levels of material reuse and product reuse, and also clearly awareness needs to be raised regarding these issues. We will target the main components within circular economy, meaning design of the whole lifetime of the products or services, and also focusing a bit on awareness raising, behavior change, which are important. Of course, creating preconditions for this product reuse and improve possibilities for repairing and so on. Targeting, of course, both the consumers and producers. And there is a slight overlap. I will still repeat it also later, but under program objective 3, we will be touching the nutrients and water issues. And this would be the main place then to handle them instead of this circular economy block. And this is, as I said, a big entity, and all main categories of waste can be targeted by these projects. And here we are also referring to the Central Baltic scale. So this should be identified and justified to work on certain issues on the Central Baltic scale, and to identify the opportunities for waste management here. And this can also mean scaling up issues from the local level, but also scaling down from the let's say more transnational level, bringing maybe European practices or even wider practices to the Central Baltic scale. So these can be addressed. And Yeah, the essence of this Central Baltic Scale would be the existence of the cross-border product or service cycles or chains, and some idea of the solutions also that would be able to tackle things across borders and on the Central Baltic Scale here. We have identified, this is again from the EU Circular Economy Action Plan. So key value chains are identified as listed here. And as I mentioned, these water and nutrient issues mainly would fall under the PO4, which I will present next. But of course, this is very much a case-by-case approach. So we will have to see where, for example, nutrient recycling would then logically fall. But this will be then handled on project level. And as an information piece on the left here, just to remind that already 4 million jobs are somehow linked to the circular economy in the EU, and the whole community is looking forward to increasing this number as well. And of course, I still have to say that this is not an exhaustive list of value chains. So if you can come up with something else, something additional to these, then you are welcome to do so, and other topics can be handled as well, as long as they contribute to circular economy and our indicators in the program. And a little bit here about the cycles or chains and their phases. And let's start with the box on the right that says that up to 80% of the product's environmental impacts are already determined at the design phase. So it's absolutely essential already when designing a product or service to consider these issues. And I have a bit listed here on the left the different phases that you have. You have the design, then you need to plan for production of the item or service. Then you take it to production, you have facilities where to produce it. Marketing has to be considered, selling the product also as well. And then especially related to products, how can you repair them? Can you repair them? So currently it seems to be a lot this single-use economy. So you take something and you use it for a short while, and then when it comes to the end of its lifetime, you cannot repair it or even recycle it. And recyclability, of course, is one more important thing that has to be considered when planning a project. So this is just to give you an idea on the chains and cycles and the contents of those. Then moving on to the possible actions. We have mentioned in many places and in many contexts that we have lists of indicative joint actions. And I will again repeat that this means that this is a selection of things that can be done within the project. I don't think that you can have a project focusing just one of them, but you should always mix these and have a suitable mix for your own planned topic. So, and here also the important thing is to think about the indicator. So if you are improving circular economy chain, then probably it's not enough to achieve that result by just doing an awareness raising campaign. So this is where you should think a bit further what all components you need. In the circular economy, we see that this mapping type of activities and awareness raising are clearly more important and more relevant than in the two other POs that I will present. So consider this, but otherwise, depending on your focus on the certain chain and certain part of those chains, then it's possible to have different kind of activities, and depending on exactly what you are focusing on, you should choose the relevant relevant type of activities, and of course it then depends on the project topic how this will be brought to life and implemented as activities in that specific project. So relevance is an important word here. Relevant activities to achieve the goal of your project. And investments are mentioned also here. I will say it right away. They are mentioned also regarding the other POs that I will present. We are referring or talking about small scale investments, and we have not defined any financial value, maximum or minimum value for these small scale investments. So in this, I also refer to the relevance. So what is relevant for the project, what is relevant for achieving the results, you should do also the investments according to that. Of course, investments need to be always well justified. They need to have also cross-border added value and importance for the cross-border cooperation. So that should always be considered. But in this period specifically, we would foresee here more this equipment type of investments than large investments into infrastructure projects or technical projects. And maybe here you can also consider our funding limits that we have in place for this period. So maximum budget for a project 4 million euros and the maximum partner budget 2 million euros. So you can also reflect with those sums a bit how this investment would fit into that scale. So I would rather say we are talking about maybe a couple hundreds of thousands than millions regarding these investments. But this is case by case and determined by the relevance of the activities for the results and contribution to the program. Something about joint elements and cross-border added value. The joint elements should always be justified, and they should add cross-border value to the project. And these things should be described always in these project plans. So cross-border added value is important. And this reflects also to the activity plan of the project. It should also be joint and integrated so that partners will do things jointly. There are no bystanders, and this emphasizes the importance of the partnership also in project planning. And just some examples. These are also general ones and will be repeated during this presentation, but you should identify the chain or cycle that you are targeting in your project in circular economy and justify why it's important to target exactly that one and why it's also important to tackle that in the cross-border context. Regarding different activities, target groups are important, and you should target different target groups. In case you are planning for trainings and events, make sure that there are mixed target groups participating to achieve the most effect. And jointly developed or even adopted existing approaches should be in place, as well as these methodologies and or technologies. And the solutions that you apply or plan to apply or develop should also be joint and jointly developed. These are very important and fundamental things. Something about the indicators still I already mentioned. So contribution to the result indicator, that's the one of the most important things. Then we also do have output indicators for which we are looking for contribution. These are more cooperation related in nature. So what kind of and how many unique organizations are participating to your projects or the cross-border cooperation. And in circular economy, the target groups listed here people, communities, businesses benefiting from the reduced use of virgin materials and decreased waste, etc. And here I think it should be noted that while private companies cannot directly participate, they are very important as target groups of these projects as well. And yeah, as potential partners, public non-profit organizations would be the most relevant. And of course, they need to have relevance for the circular economy issues and the targeted product or service chains. So what we would like you to do is to improve these chains and make them maybe more complete. Sometimes there are missing links in these chains that prevent them from being fully functional. So that's also one thing then that can be addressed in these projects. Some basic things to remember here: focus your activities. So don't try to have a too broad scope in your project. Focus on what is relevant, what is important. Do not try to cover too much ground in one project only. However, I must also say that it is foreseen that more than one cycle or chain can be targeted in one project. This is maybe not the most common case, but it's possible as well. And just a reminder too that the focus here can be both on products and services. So remember that one as well. It's not only about product development. Good. Then we have come to the end of PO program objective 3. And if there are any questions, I would kindly ask my colleague Laura to present those, please.
We do not have any questions at this point.
Okay, that is clear then. And remember that questions are not restricted to this point, so there is always a possibility to pick up the chat and put your question there, and we will try to find an answer. And you can ask about circular economy also later, so this is not closing the door from that yet. But then let's move on to the improved coastal and marine environment. Here also a bit of background, what has happened. As I said, this is continued, I would say almost exactly in the same way that we had this in the previous 1420 Central Baltic program. And obviously we didn't do enough to get rid of this thing. This is very important for our member states and all, and to address. And although achievements have been made, I must say that, and I might here just show you quickly the map of the HELCOM hotspots that have been defined, these pollution hotspots that have been defined for the Baltic Sea. And as you can see, there is quite a lot of blue in the picture. Blue means the hotspots that have been taken care of as such and have been deleted from the hotspot list. But still, we have some red dots also on this map. So there is still things to be done regarding the state of our Baltic Sea. And of course, here we are talking about the Central Baltic region, but as you know, the sea knows no borders, so we will be contributing to the improvement of the state of the whole Baltic Sea here as well. Getting back to this, I will just mention that there is also the HELCOM Baltic Sea Action Plan, which is a good background document also, and good to get acquainted with. It has been just updated this year, so please do check that out. And regarding the activities in these projects, the Central Baltic program, we will not provide you with any lists of possible nutrient load sources or things like that, but we are rather referring to the national existing and updating documents, which are the national water management plans and the national marine strategies. So from these documents, you will find the relevant things to address if you already have not identified them. So those will be the lists of potential concrete activities for you that you should choose from. Moving on to the result indicator, which is the number of improved urban and agricultural load sources. And by improved here, we mean that the load is reduced from some specific source. This, of course, leads a bit to the question that what can be considered as a load source. We are only saying urban and agricultural here. So there can be different definitions, and this is a bit case-by-case approach as well regarding the projects. You can address a point source, or you can address a non-point source. You can have a catchment area, larger, smaller, which you are addressing. So there is a multitude of approaches regarding these. And of course, depending on what kind of load you are targeting, the sources are also different, but this is also good to know, and the sources must be, of course, identified in the applications. And although it's not a direct indicator, we are expecting these reductions of the load in these sources. So this should also be known what the contribution of the project to these will be. And obviously, we have the background described as the poor health of the Baltic Sea, and to use both existing and new measures to reduce the inflows of different harmful substances. And we are targeting direct measures which reduce the load, and also preventive measures that reduce, let's say, the creation of the potential load already. And I already mentioned these national water management plans and marine strategies. Those are the relevant documents for you. And it's good to remember here that we will be targeting both sea-based load sources and land-based load sources. So while we are talking about the state of the sea as such, it's obvious that most and many things to prevent this load from getting to the sea are done on the land side of the systems. And here we have mentioned agricultural sector, for example. Forestry is one potential thing, but there is also a multitude of other things that can be targeted in these projects. And of course, the more direct positive effects your project has, the better it is in the eyes of the Central Baltic program. Here again, we have the indicative joint actions, including again possible small-scale investments. Different kind of pilot activities are possible. Planning, investing. Always when talking about planning, I want to say that it can be a part of the project, but shouldn't be the main target. So you should always aim for the concrete things that reduce the inflows. So even if you might have some small parts in the project related to research activities, analysis, surveys, and planning, those should be the small steps, let's say, in the beginning of the projects, which then quite quickly would lead to the how would you call it, proper implementation, which then leads to the contribution of towards the program indicators and really reduces the inflows of these substances. Here again, same thing that was already mentioned under the circular economy. So joint elements, cross-border, added value. very important. And remember to involve the target groups broadly, and also when planning the project, refer to the needs of the target groups. That is a very important thing as well. Going into the indicators and target groups and partners. Here the result indicator has already been elaborated on, which is the most important thing. And as outputs, the cooperation aspects are covered and asked from you when you are planning your project and to define your contribution to the cooperation across borders and within and on the outside of the project. And a target group can be basically anyone who is benefiting from these reduced loads that you will address in your project. And regarding potential partners, the exception here is that we foresee that private companies would have some relevance and would have maybe a possibility to participate here as project partners, not just as target groups, but only when they are relevant for reducing the nutrients, etc. So not automatically. We of course cannot intervene with our funding the competitive market and give the competitive edge to certain companies with our support in the market. So when these private companies, if they are relevant, they really need to have some unique skills which cannot be procured, because obviously we mostly would like to see the private companies as rather as procured providers of external expertise than partners. But sometimes with very good justifications, they may be included under PO4 and actually also PO5 in this program as well as partners. Some basic things to remember also here: be focused. Focus on the most relevant things, the most relevant sources of the load, and really aim for achieving a change. The change should be the product or the result of the project. You have achieved some kind of a change, and in this case the change is taking place in the nutrient loads. And we would very much like to see that these reductions for which you work, they would take place already during the project, or then there would need to be very clear indication that the solutions that are applied in the project will take effect immediately and achieve the reductions in the very near future after the project, but those would be exceptional cases. And also to focus on the very most concrete activities, like I mentioned. There might be different elements to start the project, but then the main focus should always be the concrete activities to reduce the load from different sources. This covers program objective 4. I wonder if now there are any questions presented by our audience. What do you say, Laura?
Well, somehow our audience is very quiet and still no questions in the chat at this
Okay.
time.
Then I must consider this a very comprehensive presentation and all questions are answered. Okay.
Are there suggestions for the number of working packages?
Going very deep already. I will answer firstly that we will handle this issue a bit I think on Friday, when we are talking about the project work plan design. So we will get a bit deeper into this then, but I will just say that no, there are no recommendations for regular projects on how many work packages they should have. So no direct numerical recommendations, but I guess I will leave it at that at this point, and we will get back to this work plan design then later this week. But thank you very much for the first question for this session. I assume nothing else appeared in the meanwhile.
No, not yet.
Okay, then we will move on again to the last program objective on my list, which is the decreased CO2 emissions. Also here a bit on the current state of play. We addressed these similar type of issues also in the 1420 program, but from a bit different angle. So the main target then was not CO2 reductions, but rather just the effectiveness of transport. And also in the 1420 period, we partly targeted the transport corridors, which were mainly between the member state, between countries, between even regions on a larger geographical scale, but going through our Central Baltic region. This is not the case anymore, so the corridors are out of the scope on this 21-27 program. So this is important to remember. So we are basically not addressing the traffic or transport between the countries as such directly as understood by these transport corridors. And I think most of us and most of you know that the EU is very strongly targeting climate change, as is the whole rest of the world. Here are just a few examples on the things that are on the table currently. We have the Climate and Energy Package 2020, which is, I think, pretty much accomplished already. And then we have the Climate and Energy Framework for 2030. And then I already mentioned earlier this long-term strategy on climate change to be climate neutral by 2050. So these are also on the background, and of course we are working on a much shorter term, 6-8 years, as we are considering the program period. So we are looking for steps towards achievement of these long-term goals, but focusing on the Central Baltic scale also here. And like the circular economy, this is also part of the big European Green Deal as well. And well, what we have maybe a bit special in the Central Baltic area regarding the traffic-related issues, within the area we have, of course, our big capital cities, and then we also have remote areas. So we are going from one edge to the other regarding transport as well. So big transport hubs, and then also the remote areas such as archipelagos, for example, which have a very different kind of challenges, and on a different scale, of course, regarding the CO2 emissions as well. But as we will see soon, these all can somehow be targeted under this program. And here, as result indicators, we actually have two things. We want, first of all, and most importantly, to improve the intermodal transport nodes and transport areas that have these CO2 reductions. And then the other indicator regards solutions taken up or upscaled by different organizations. So the projects that make these improvements in transport nodes and transport areas also take up some kind of solutions or adapt maybe existing solutions to achieve these. And this is, of course, the second indicator is a bit more leaning towards outputs maybe than results. So this can be considered as well, but still taken up here as a result indicator. Then some background on the approach. Of course, this relates to the CO2 intensity of the transport systems, and specifically targeting this multimodal integration, meaning that how to effectively connect the different modes of transport in a transport hub, so that people can flexibly change from one mode to another, and this should be organized in the way that there would not be as much CO2 emissions as previously. So this is a lot also about planning related issues. And what we target and what is in our scope are the transport nodes and areas in the Central Baltic region, which already exist, and improving these mobility solutions then in both large and small urban transport systems. And while urban is the key word here, and this is based on the fact that, of course, in urban areas there are more people living and more people affected by these CO2 emissions, so it is considered more effective to reduce the emissions in urban areas than maybe in the hinterland areas. But of course, these transport hubs in urban areas are practically always also servicing the hinterland areas. So these areas are included as well, and there can definitely be solutions for them also. And well, the goal is to achieve these mobility solutions and improved intermodal mobility that really then help to reduce these emissions. And we are looking for these reductions as well, although the result indicator, for example, is not directly talking about reduction of emissions, but these should be elaborated in the project applications as well. And again, the list of indicative joint actions in a similar way than before. Different things can be applied. Digital solutions may come up more strongly under this program objective. And of course, the new mobility solutions or adapted mobility solutions. And small-scale investments, of course, possible also here in justified cases. And again, choose a suitable mix, focus on the relevant actions to achieve the results, and make sure that the results you achieve contribute to the program indicators and the program level results. So a suitable mix of actions. Joint elements, similarly here, maybe to pick out from this list that is repeating maybe a bit similar things, but the last point here says that there should be an intermodal transport node or intermodal/multimodal transport system with common challenges in place. So this comes to the cross-border added value and cross-border cooperation as well. So identified challenges in identified transport nodes, and really the main focus on this intermodal or multimodal transport, so where means of transport are being changed from train to bus or from bus to bike or things like this. There are plenty of possible combinations, and I think plenty of improvements to be made and to be identified by our projects and intervened. Similar examples here, basically jointly developed everything. And here it's also clarified what I just talked about that the intermodal transport node refers to a place or location where different modes of transport are interlinking. And also the transport area system then refers to the urban area plus its hinterlands. So it's a bit of a bigger entity where these different transport modes then coexist and interact. Then again, indicators here already mentioned, and just to repeat that also on the result side, we are expecting CO2 reductions, although the reductions will not be the actual indicator. It's not the amount of CO2 that the project removes, but rather the transport node or area that is improved. But we are still interested very much in the fact that the reductions also take place. And the output indicators actually are the same than for the previous two ones. And target groups also here very broad, related to the benefits of this less CO2 intensive traffic and improved solutions to use the multimodal transport means. And here, of course, in the project, it's both movement of people and goods that can be targeted as such. And as partners here, also private companies are possible in specific and very well justified cases, but otherwise similarly public non-profit organizations, authorities on different levels of the society can participate. And I guess I can say in general about the potential partners that you should always focus on the impact there as well, so that you are having partners who really can make the change. There are many organizations that can create the preconditions for a change, but here we very much want to see on the partner lists of our projects those organizations that then can apply, take into use these solutions that are developed in different projects, regardless of the PO. So this is very important to remember. We want the project still to take the next step and really implement things that make a change and make a difference during the project lifetime. And again, remember to focus. Don't try to tackle too much. Aim for achieving real changes. Aim for achieving sustainable changes that will not disappear but will continue to be changed still after the project implementation has been finalized. And like related to the state of the sea, also here we would very much like to see the reductions take place during the project, but we also understand that the CO2 reduction specifically is a long-term thing and might not be possible during the project, especially if you implement your solution at the very end of the project. But then we would also like it to be foreseen that the change really will be made, and the planned changes will not be dusting on the shelves somewhere, but will really be taken to use. And here also, while we are saying in our guidance that the typical project duration is 2 to 3 years, I think here especially we can also foresee that there can be projects with longer implementation time to be able to achieve these reductions within the project lifetime. But as always, these have to be justified. And yeah, maybe it's good to repeat one more time this last sentence. Focus on really the concrete activities in your project and focus on achieving the change. Then, Laura, how does our chat look? Is there any additional work for me there?
Yes, there is.
Thank
So
you.
one is on this last objective and one on the previous. So let's start with the last objective. And here the question is, does the program really mean only CO2 reduction, or can we see the title reduction of greenhouse gas reduction in general?
This is a good question. We are specifically foreseeing CO2 reductions, so that is our main focus. I think we can then discuss with specific project ideas of their suitability, and of course they would also need to relate to the whole concept of intermodal mobility and traffic as such. But we are mainly focusing on CO2 reductions. So this is what brings contribution from projects to our program goals.
Right, and then there is one more question about nutrient flows to the sea. And the question is, how, for example, the nutrient depletion can be demonstrated, for example, during a 3-year project related to an agricultural leaching load, especially in case of a non-point source ranking. Does this mean that the relevant technical measures should already been taken before the project start?
Also a very good question, and I referred a bit to this in these things to remember sessions, I think, but it is of course understandable that if you take a large catchment area, for example, it's really very difficult if you have a non-point source. Also, it's very difficult to measure these things, and of course we would primarily like to have measurable results, but in these cases of non-point load sources, it's completely understandable that this is not fully possible. In these cases, I would accept references, for example, for previous research. Let's say you have a method that has been tested somewhere and you are adapting it to our circumstances, then you have a certain reference from somewhere else, what kind of difference this method potentially makes. So then you can refer to that thing. So you have some kind of scientific background information which you can refer to. That would be also acceptable in justified cases. So estimates are okay, and of course when talking about the non-point load and agricultural load, it also depends, for example, on the weather and how much it rains. It might be completely something different this year and next year. So this continuous measurements, of course, would be nice and important, but not always possible. So it a bit relates to the actions that would be taken, and then based on those, the measurability would have to be somehow explained and justified and established. So we would at least expect to know the scale of reductions. We understand fully that it's not always possible to measure exactly what is happening. And if these actions take place in the very end of the project, then of course there is a short period for measurements anyway, but in these cases, I think it should be somehow also, there should be some kind of certainty that the reductions will take place to some extent at least. Thank you. I hope this somehow at least answers the questions. These are a bit complicated issues.
No, there are no other questions in the chat.
Okay, then I can see that we are also well ahead of time, but I will just bring you back to some general things, and once again remind and repeat and go a bit into some things that you should remember and consider when you are planning the projects. So the holy triangle of contribution and things to remember here. So have a look at the result and output indicators, and first of all find out what the program wants you to do. Look at the results, look at the outputs, what we want to achieve, and then you will know whether your idea or your activity, your things would contribute to that, and that's where you start the planning of a project, or where you start mirroring your idea towards the program, and whether our funding is then something to look for, or whether to turn somewhere else. There are of course a multitude of funding opportunities as well. I don't want to drive anyone away from our program, but sometimes you can also look elsewhere when especially when it seems that the Central Baltic might not be the place. And the other thing that we want to emphasize very much is having the right partners. And apart from the technical eligibility, which is not very limiting in our program, then focus on the relevance of the partners. So each partner should have a clear role in the project. No bystanders, no partners that will just take care of project management because they are good at that and have no other activities. So the joint activities should be in place. They should all contribute, all partners should contribute to achieving the results of the project, and they should have a clear role in that. And then one more important thing is that we really don't want that the project results will continue to exist in some drawers or cabinets after the project has ended, but really we want them to be still alive and implemented and functional. And really the project should have a clear vision on what happens after the project and how these things will be used, and who is responsible, and these kind of things. And consider this already when planning the project. So one important thing when you get started, we would like to talk to you about your idea. So what we are promoting is our project idea form that you can find from our website, centralbaltic.eu. And this is a set of simple questions. Only one small part is shown here. It is a bit longer, but here we are asking about the basic things that we are requiring from our project. So please pick this up when you have an idea and answer these questions. Send to us, to the relevant person, whether you are interested in environmental projects or other projects. You will find the relevant contact information. Still, I think I will even have it here at the end of my presentation. But this is what we absolutely recommend to do. Consult with us. We will be able to say quite quickly if the idea is not fitting to the program at all, and then of course discussing further on the strong and weak points of the idea and how to improve and what to consider when going forward towards the funding application. Yes, there is a lot of information and support available. These seminars that we are having this week, good place to start. And I think we will come back with a more detailed events regarding on how to fill in the application form then when we will open our new GEMS system. Take up on this opportunity to consult with us individually. we have a network of contact points in each country and all, and they will also be able to provide you the initial help, guiding us to the relevant person and so on. So they are also there for you. Website has all the guidance that we have produced, so you can refer to that as well. If you are in social media, we are active in in Facebook and Twitter, so timely information will be provided, and news you will find from these channels as well. And then please do sign up for our newsletter on our website. We will have that active as well during this period, and it will keep you up to date and provide you with the information on recent things and developments of our program, especially important in this point when the first call is starting in a few months, and things are busy everywhere. Everyone is preparing and looking for information. So please note these points, and whatever remains unanswered after these, then you are free to contact the Joint Secretariat and ask your questions, present your questions to us if you don't find information from our written guidance or elsewhere. So I am the person to contact regarding the environmental things, and you will also see the contact information of my other colleagues here. So please do get in touch with us with whatever questions, whether it's a question or a project idea or something else that is unclear for you. With this thank you note, I will conclude my presentation. We still have time to take some questions, and I think soon our communication officer Kersti will also put to the chat a link to the feedback form. Please pick that link up and provide your feedback.
The link is there, Samu.
Okay, it's already there. I don't see the chat when I'm sharing the screen, so thank you for mentioning. So please pick that up and provide the feedback to us. We are continuously trying to improve and provide more information, and especially more relevant information, and in a relevant form, so it would be easy for you to digest. But did I understand correctly, Laura, that there are currently no questions regarding this session or topics as such?
No more questions.
Yes. Then I will just thank you for being with me. We are 20 minutes ahead of time. I don't think that is a bother to anyone. It is already late in the afternoon, so I will let you go home and wish you a fruitful continuing of the week. I hope we will see in these applicant seminars till tomorrow and Friday, and have a good project planning and fruitful cooperation with your coming project partners. Thank you very much from my behalf, and remember to click on the feedback link on the chat. Thank you.